Hello, we are the Bloobcast. I'm Rob.
I'm Euan.
I'm James.
And why are we called Bloobcast?
Yes. I'm always going to say that like Megatron.
Yeah, we're never going to get past the Megatron voice at this point. Like, it's always just going to be yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just use that as the yes from now on. It's just.
Well, there's plenty to select from that show. There's like different yeses in every episode.
Oh yeah, he made sure there was a variety. Like,
yeah.
you will have heard the word yes at some point whilst watching Beast Wars.
And then when we run out, we'll just have to scour Beast machines for any times he says yes.
Like, we'll just keep going. We'll lobby Mainframe to make a new Beast Wars season just so we can keep using different varieties of yes.
Yeah.
No, don't do that because it'll be like that reboot one they did a couple of years ago.
Oh no, please God, no. Well, we're talking about X Men.
There we go.
We're talking about the X Men movie specifically, the ones that came out in the
2000s.
Yeah, I don't know when it was, like the mid 2000s. I want to say.
1999.
First one came out in 2000.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is the original, like, kind of X-Men movie franchise before the MCU. It's the first time we've seen a superhero team established in the form of a movie. Yeah. We haven't seen Justice League or Super Friends or anything like that.
Very much so.
It was it was the first kind of big superhero team up. So.
Yeah.
And it was also the first kind of like movie that kicked off like the superhero boom because we had Blade in 1998. So I think it's this movie that really kicked off because before then we had movies like Batman and Robin and Steel with Shaquille O'Neal.
Well, we had Superman originally in the 70s, and then it kind of, you had the occasional superhero film. But yeah, it was kind of Blade and X-Men were the ones that really got the ball rolling because then you had Spider-Man a year later.
Oh, yeah.
And we also had Batman as well a couple of times as well.
Oh, yeah, with Batman Begins in 2004, I think, 2003.
Yeah. Batman Begins was 2005.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that late.
And do you know I think this is the first Marvel film that ever came out. The first Marvel film properly to come out in theatres was Howard the Duck, I think it was, by George Lucas.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love that. Yeah, there were a bunch of like aborted attempts at Marvel films over the years.
My favourite is the Fantastic Four film that was only made so this company could keep the rights to Fantastic Four, and they never intended to release it, so it was never released.
Do you know what the hilarious thing about that movie is? It's still arguably better than any other attempt at a Fantastic Four film. I will stand by this opinion. Check out the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, 1990 or whatever it is, and I will adamantly argue it's more like wholesome and fun than any other Fantastic Four film.
Isn't it like, doesn't it have nothing to do with the comics though? It's like its own thing almost.
No, it like follows the same basic story that every Fantastic Four film follows, because apparently we can never get past their stupid origin story. Like they should have just gone, okay, the Roger Corman movie did Fantastic Four, the origin. We can do adventures from there. But yeah, this is about the X-Men.
This time you bring it back to X-Men.
Yes.
One of the reasons, I think I read this somewhere, I saw how true it was, that apparently Stan Lee, he got bored of like coming up with different ways for these superheroes to get their powers, and he's like, they were just born with their powers. They're mutants.
Yeah.
There's a video of Stan Lee floating around somewhere where he's just like, I'm not a scientific guy, but Marvel Comics is more intelligent than DC because, we got surfboards for the Silver Surfer, that's completely scientific. And, the mutants, they're born with their abilities, and the Fantastic Four, they just went into space and got their powers. And Thor's hammer, that doesn't make him fly. He throws the hammer and he goes with it.
When Superman flies, he has no visible means of locomotion. You might wonder, how is he flying? He's just like this, lying in the air, and he's flying. Not us. At Marvel, we're scientific. I wanted Thor to fly. So he has that hammer. I had him swing it around as fast as a propeller. Then he lets go. Now it's attached to his wrist. So when the hammer goes shooting off into space, it takes him with it. That's how he flies. Incontrovertible scientific fact. And that's the difference between us and the competition.
Completely scientific. I love Stanley so much. He's the one.
Yeah, he's
probably a terrible impression of him, but he was
a legend. He was a living legend. Even though I personally prefer DC, in terms of the universe, Marvel does the better movies. But I think overall, I prefer DC's universe. But I still think Stanley was a living legend.
100%.
I think one of the reasons why we're kind of touching on X-Men is that, for all of its ups and downs as a film series, it's a really great superhero series, I guess.
Yeah.
It has all the things you kind of want in a superhero film. It's all there. And the best part is, as you said, they skip over all the boring origins stuff so we can actually get straight to the adventure, I'm not saying every origin film is boring, but it's like a Spider-Man film where you have Uncle Ben getting shot or Batman and his parents getting shot. It's like, yes, we know that this happens. Can we move on, please?
Yeah.
So that is one thing I like about that first X-Men film is it slowly introduces you to the world and introduces concepts like the mutants, and we see everything through the eyes of Wolverine and Rogue and they kind of bring us into the universe when we get to Dimension, and Professor X explains everything. So
I was thinking about that. What's really cool about Rogue and Wolverine is that they are outsiders within the mutant community. So not only are mutants a bunch of weirdos that are outside of the social norm, then you have this immortal knife man and this Black Widow girl that if you touch, you die. They are the weirdest out of everyone else. You think, okay, telepaths, telekinetic people, a guy who can freeze things. It's okay, can they stab knives out of their fists? Because that's what Wolverine can do, One of the reasons why they've got a lot of mileage out of Wolverine specifically is because, he's almost like a cowboy in that he kind of comes in and out of other people's adventures. He's kind of the top trump that you pull at the end to win the game or something.
We normally like to talk about how we discovered these the things we talk about. So shall we discuss how we discovered these movies? So who wants to go first?
I want to say my first experience of X-Men was actually X-Men 2. And I want to say it was on TV. I cannot remember when, because I saw X-Men fairly early on. So it's really blurred in my mind now when I saw it. But I want to say I caught the opening scene of X-Men 2 when you had Nightcrawler jumping around the White House.
My God.
And beating up all the White House guards. Arguably the coolest moment.
I do love that meme.
This entire series, when they've got Mozart's Dies Irae playing. It's so great.
Did we watch that film together recently? This year?
I think I might have just linked that scene to you guys multiple times to make sure you'd seen it.
Yeah, it's a very good scene.
I was like, guys, have you seen the scene? It's really awesome. And I think it's always been burned into my brain ever since as I like X-Men, and it's because of this scene. So that's my X Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay, so now I'll go on to it. So I have vague memories of the first one coming out around 2000. I was about 6 or coming up to 7 by the time it came out. But I remember I couldn't see it because this it was 12, and this is before a 12A, so under 12s couldn't go and see it. But I definitely remember more of X-Men 2 coming out. Yeah. Because I remember seeing pictures of it in a film magazine that my dad bought, I think because it had Lord of the Rings on the cover. And then I remember going into Woolworths one day, again tying back to our last episode, And I remember seeing the action figures in Wars. I remember seeing a figure of Cyclops and thinking, wow, this Cyclops guy looks so cool. I really wanted to see it. For some reason, I don't know why, I didn't get around seeing any of it till Christmas 2004. It was shown on Sky TV. I remember me and my siblings watching with my dad, and we were enjoying it. I think we got up to the part where Wolverine and like Iceman and Rogue escaped the mansion. And then I think Wolverine said, my dad made us turn it off. But then I saw X Men: The Last Stand at the cinema, and at the time I enjoyed it. We'll get more on that later. And then I finally saw the first two in full. I think around late 2009. I was about 16, and my family, we just got a new Blu-ray player, and it came bundled with loads of Blu-rays. One of the Blu-rays that we got bundled with was a box set of what was at the time the X Men trilogy. Yeah. I remember watching the first two and falling in love with them, and I remember kind of enjoying the third one, thinking, it's not that bad, but oh boy, how things change in like 10 years.
Well, I don't know. I think I just didn't rate it when I first saw it. But anyway, James.
Yes.
What's your knowledge or your origins with X-Men?
I think honestly I was probably as young as about 12, maybe 10, and like I was walking around in the living room and my mum was just watching TV and X-Men was on. And it's the final scene of the first X-Men movie where, like there's that weird frog mutant or Toad, the shape, Toad, and also the shapeshifter. Mystique was changed into the one that spouts thunder from her hand. I've got a name now.
Storm.
Thank you. So
this is going to be a great commentary. Just James going,
what's someone that has knives coming out his hand?
I mean, to be fair, in that first movie, those characters mentioned don't really do anything.
No, really
but what happens is I remember seeing that bit where Mystique gets like cut by Wolverine. I thought, ugh, when I was like 10 or 12. But then years later, like when I was about 16 or something like that, I watched First Class in cinemas, and that was really good. I thought, oh wow, this is really cool. And I thought it was part of the MCU at the time, and it turns out it wasn't, so I was just really confused. That's literally just my early memories of it. I only watched the whole shebang, as it were, this year. So
that's interesting. I think I only saw First Class. I think First Class was the first one I saw at the cinema as well. I think everything else I saw either on TV or you got the DVD for it or whatever. But so it's interesting that
I remember seeing The Last Stand in the cinema. I saw First Class, and I remember seeing Days of Future Past in the cinema, but all the others I never saw. I nearly saw Wolverine in the cinema, but they wouldn't let us in because I was under 18, so I couldn't accompany my siblings. So I ended up seeing Coraline instead, which in hindsight was probably the better.
You dodged the bullet there. X Men Origins Wolverine or Coraline any day.
Oh, Coraline's amazing. There's no argument about that. Yeah. The only films I saw in cinemas for the X-Men were Deadpool's, First Class, the Wolverine, and Logan. I want to say.
I saw Deadpool 2 in the cinema.
How did you?
Funny story about that. I was about, I think this was 2 years ago, so I would have been 24. I remember I booked my ticket online. I remember I handed the guy my iPod to get him to scan my QR code with the ticket, and he was like, "Oh, can I see your ID, please?" And I was just like, I was a bit confused. I thought, wait, I don't look that young, do I?
The hilarious thing that with Deadpool for me is that I haven't seen Deadpool 2, but my mum has seen Deadpool 2 and Deadpool 1. My mum is the bigger fan of Deadpool.
No, that's funny you mention that, because my mum loves Deadpool as well. I don't understand. There's something weird about mothers loving Deadpool. I don't understand it.
I don't understand this.
I don't think my mum would be into Deadpool.
Is it something to do with Ryan Reynolds? It must be.
Maybe. Yeah. It's maybe the cocky Ryan Reynolds voice and the spandex.
Okay. So shall we move on to talking about the...
Let's move on from this quickly.
I think it's probably a good idea to talk about each movie sequentially. So let's start at the beginning with the first X-Men.
Wow. There's a lot of movies to get through, I've just realised.
It's a lot of downs, but...
But the first film, it really does... get the ball rolling. Like, it introduces a lot of characters.
Can I?
Doesn't it? It starts off in the Auschwitz, right?
Yeah. Oh my
I
gosh,
love that.
that was intense.
Why I like that is it gives us context why Magneto is the way he is, because obviously he lived through the Holocaust as a Jewish kid, and now he's grown up to see like mutants being kind of like talked about in the same manner. So obviously he's going to think that I'm going to make sure this does not happen again. So we are going to war with humans. Humanity is awful.
Yeah, it's an interesting characterization, which I really love. They kind of expanded on in First Class, where they essentially have Magneto Nazi hunter at one point, which is the coolest scene ever.
Oh, is that First Class?
Yeah, when he's just going around murdering Nazis with their own Nazi daggers.
That is pretty cool, actually. There's cool music that plays over it as well as he's doing it. It's like, oh my god.
We'll get onto Third Class in a bit.
We will. But it's an interesting, kind of origin story. It's very dark. I don't know if I'm entirely comfortable with a superhero film starting off in Auschwitz.
I don't think the X Men movies felt like superhero movies. I actually kind of felt a couple of times like, this is not like a superhero movie.
This is what I thought, fortunately, the first one, but at the same time, Magneto's plan contrasts heavily with like the more serious tone they're going for, because it's like he's got this over the top and ridiculous comic book like plan, which
I love it though. It's so silly.
But I think it would have worked better if the tone was a bit more serious, because as it is, it's just so over the top and comic booky.
I think that's quite a nice balance though, because like it's very serious at places, but then just out of nowhere there'll be a spandex joke, or there'll be like Magneto going, Charles Xavier, I'm going to take over the world.
Magneto and Charles's relationship is definitely the highlight of every film. Like even X Men 3, it's like, as long as those two are in the same room together, it's like, oh thank God, the scene isn't going to entirely suck.
The casting of these movies is so spot on. Like they pretty much perfectly embody the characters, although sadly some characters don't get enough to do. Like Cyclops, who I'm going to bang on about a lot. Cyclops in the comics, he's like the leader of the X Men. So,
do you know what they needed to do?
Movies, he's just pushed to the back.
They needed someone to look like Neo so they could match with the time trend or whatever was going on. There was a lot of like movies in the 2000s where people had to wear sunglasses. So they're like, right, this guy has lasers coming out of his eyes. Let's put some sunglasses on.
He looks cooler with the visor though. I love the visor. That's what drew me to him when I saw the toy. I was like, oh, this guy looks so cool.
It is strange. Like, especially like getting Halle Berry to play Storm, and she was like an Oscar winner at this point, in her career.
Monsters Ball came out after the first X Men. We'll get onto that because they actually added more scenes. They added more scenes for her in X Men 2 to accommodate her.
Because that's the thing, is that she is. But she's underused in X Men 2 as well. Like she's not really given much of a character ever. Like, she's just one of the team.
At least a lot of these characters have one or two actors. Colossus has like friggin' 5 actors throughout the whole franchise. I don't know if he's alive or what he's doing or who he is anymore.
He's hanging out. He's fine. He's doing his own thing.
They changed his culture like in Deadpool completely. It's just like what is
aesthetically, these movies look. This first one looks great. I particularly like the Brotherhood of Mutants Lair. It looks looks like such a cool place. And
I have no idea how they get like pizza deliveries, but it does look cool. I just wonder, like, do they get food in there? Like, it's just a big cave. Like, what are they doing for supplies? But yeah,
there's another thing I've noticed. One thing I took issues. Mystique. At one point in the film, lures Rogue out of Xavier's mansion by pretending to be Bobby/Iceman, saying, "Oh yeah, the press is angry with you. You should go away." But then Iceman could have walked over at any moment and said, "Hey, who are you? Why can you?"
But Mystique is so awesome. What she would do in that situation is that she would murder Iceman and then just kidnap Rogue. She would be like a plan. She seems like the sort of person who has like a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. She would have it covered.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded if they'd established that, like, Iceman was kind of, like, tied up in a cupboard somewhere. But no, he's just walking around normally.
Is his name Iceman, just for the record, sorry? Is his name
That's his name, that's the name in the comics, yeah.
That is ridiculous.
His name's Bobby, but yeah,
right.
he is Iceman.
So they couldn't find anything creative, they just had to call him Iceman.
Yeah, it's odd that, like, I mean, even Frozone, like, got a better name in The Incredibles, so it's weird that they couldn't come up with anything better. Like, I guess, like, Mr. Freeze was already taken, I don't know. I mean...
Yeah, I get that. Well, like, Waterman in Spider-Man is... I think Waterman is...
Hydro Man.
Hydro Man. Even that sounds like a better name, though.
Yeah, at least Pyro sounds kind of cool, but, you know, Pyro, it's fine. Like, it's an alright name.
Another thing I remember, Toad gets some stupid line in this movie.
Oh my god, let's talk about Storm.
What happens if you shock a toad or something like that, isn't it?
What happens if a toad is struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
But I kind of, in a weird way, despite it being terrible, I kind of appreciate that, because, I don't know, I like dumb shit like that. Like, I just kind of go... It's like the bit where he walks through the metal detector and it goes off. I'm just like, that's so stupid.
the first film is full of dumb stuff. As much as we love it. Yeah, as much as we love it, you know, it's dumb. It's not going for anything bigger than that, I don't think.
It's like the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. It's got so many dumb stuff, like the Green Goblin is stupid. We love that movie.
But that's Willem Dafoe hamming it up the same way that Ian McKellen hams it up as Magneto. It's really fun. They are fun villains to watch. Yeah. You know, this is the one where there's the scene with all the police cars, right? And Magneto like takes control of all of the guns, right? That's in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite scene because there's just the wonderful line, and it's a really cool, like, chilling line when he turns all the guns back on all the police, and then, like, Professor X gets one of, I think he gets Sabretooth, one of Magneto's henchmen to grab Magneto, and he's like, "You'll have to kill me, Charles," and then he's like, "I can't stop them all, Charles." Like when he has all the gun triggers are about to pull on all of these cops.
And there's a bullet that's about to go into one guy's head.
And he's screaming. It's horrible.
It's brilliant. It's like one of those moments where I'm like, yeah, Magneto's awesome.
Do you know what one of my favourite scenes is? The first scene at the beginning when like Charles and Xavier have a little talk after they have that conference, and they're going like, "It doesn't have to be this way, Magneto," and he's just like, "No, Charles, you'll see one day that my methods right." There's something Shakespearean about it. There's something Shakespearean about it. Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, because
it's a clash of ideology.
Yeah. The reason why Fox were interested in doing the X Men movies was because they had the X Men cartoon, which we'll talk about in its own episode on like Fox Kids, and that was doing really well. So that's what made it an interesting movie. This movie is like so totally like the X Men cartoon tries to do more serious stuff, but this is on a different scale. So just imagine like being a kid who grew up watching the cartoon and going to see this movie and it being like, oh, this is a bit more serious than I'm used to.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's funny that you mentioned how, you know, you couldn't get in, like, because you were under 12. You know, like, these were the kind of the more adult superhero films in comparison to, like, Spider-Man. Yeah. So, X-Men 1 is pretty good. It's a pretty cool film. It's pretty dumb in places, but otherwise it's pretty good.
And what about
X-Men 2, on the other hand?
X-Men 2 is glorious.
Yeah, I love X-Men 2. There was the one where they finally brought in the fact that X-Men stabs people, because there's that famous scene in the kitchen where like the SWAT team come in and he like full on stabs this guy, and I think that was like the first time they showed him like really properly like just murder someone.
Oh,
I was like, this is your 12A superhero movie.
Yeah, I mean they raised the stakes so much because like the threat threatens both the heroes and the villains, so they end up being forced to work together. But even then, Magneto uses this to his advantage at the very end. Wolverine, but the villain has a link to Wolverine's past, so it gives Wolverine stakes in the plot, because his thing in these movies is he has no idea who he is, and his arc at least in the first two is him working out where he came from.
Yeah.
And that was basically kind of resolved in X Men 2. So it told us everything we needed to know. There was no need to tell any more of that story.
Yes. Remember that, movies. The first 2 films told Wolverine's story. You don't need another film. Thank you. Right. We've just erased a movie from existence, so now we can all move on with our lives. And well done us, guys. We did it.
Oh, yeah. And
We stopped X Men Origins.
Can we talk about how, I mean, the movie is also great, character driven, like there's lots of small scenes of the characters, and those are some of the best scenes in the film.
Yeah.
Like there's I think the part in the campsite where Magneto's like teaming up with the other X-Men and they're kind of all talking. That's so good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like the like the action scenes, of course, particularly of the fight with Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike.
Yeah,
arguably possibly the greatest
cool
action sequence in this whole series.
Oh, that reminds me. This wasn't Lady Deathstrike, but I wanted to bring this up. So in the first X-Men, there's the fight between Wolverine and Mystique, right?
Yeah.
And there's a bit, of course, where he eventually does manage to stab her, I think, like in the shoulder or something. Mm-hmm. But what happened in real life is that Hugh Jackman had a stunt double. No, Mystique had a stunt double.
Rebecca Romijn had a stunt double.
Yeah, Vicky Phillips was the stunt double who Hugh Jackman accidentally stabbed with real knife.
I did not know that. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she was supposed to move out of the way at one point, and he accidentally stabbed her shoulder or something, like an inch into her shoulder. And apparently she was really cool about it and wasn't, apparently she kind of just brushed it off. But yeah, he was the one freaking out.
I would be freaking out if that happened. I'd be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
which I imagine Hugh Jackman would do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she just said it's really awesome because I'm one of the only people in the world who's actually been stabbed by Wolverine. So, yeah, she seemed really cool about it. But yeah, like it's just these are real knives that they use sometimes in the films. Like obviously they're fake when they actually go into people, but yeah, in this case they were using real knives and they actually stabbed someone. But yes, Lady Deathstrike's fight is like definitely top tier in terms of events in the X-Men series. Like they kind of overshot it where it was so good that nothing in the series has ever been able to top that one fight between her and Wolverine, sadly. But
yeah,
they do try.
One negative I have about X-Men 2, which is a lot because there's only one negative thing I have, is that Cyclops gets the shaft even more than he does in the first one. He's barely in it. And he's basically, most of the time he's in it, he's been brainwashed by Stryker to fight the other X-Men. And it's just like such a waste of this character.
Or Cyclops. He just doesn't get any love. It's like, he's the one in the relationship with Jean Grey. And by the time we get to X-Men 3, you would think that Wolverine and Jean Grey were like always the item, that like Cyclops was never even involved. And it's like, dude, this is like the actual boyfriend and you've just completely shafted him throughout these last 3 films. So,
we'll get to that when we move on to the next movie. But
before we do,
can we talk about Nightcrawler? Because Nightcrawler is awesome, and he's played by
Alan Cumming.
Alan Cumming, and Euan has met Alan Cumming. You met him just before lockdown.
I did. This is a cool story. I saw him in Samuel Beckett's Endgame. He was doing a performance with Daniel Radcliffe, which was, I guess, Daniel Radcliffe was doing theatre again, because I think he hasn't done theatre since Equus. But yeah, so Alan, he does theatre all the time. He does loads of shows. But anyway, my mum went to school with Alan many a year ago, and so my sister messaged Alan on Instagram and said, oh hey, we're coming to see your show, can we hang out? And he was like, yeah sure, turn up at the backstage later and we'll hang out. And yeah, so we just chatted for ages. I mentioned that I was a big fan of X-Men and Flute from Spy Kids,
not Son of the Mask.
I did not mention Son of the Mask, no.
I forgot that existed.
And he was like, oh my god, he was delightful. I really want to Alan, if you're listening to this, you're an awesome guy, and we really enjoyed the huge amount of gin and tonic that you gave us
Oh my god!
the whole time. And
did he also say something? Did he say that the government's response to COVID meant they had no idea what the f*** they were doing?
I think he just says that generally. I can't remember if he said that during the conversation, but he's always been critical of the government.
He sounds like a lovely chap. So if you want,
we'll bring him on the show.
Yeah, no, invite him on the show because he actually also was involved with Spy Kids, and I wouldn't mind talking about that to him. So
I think Spy Kids, if it's not already on the list, it'll be put on the list.
Yes,
will be put on
put it on the list, Rob.
Alan. It's weird to think that Alan was such a big part of our childhoods because he was in James Bond, he was in GoldenEye.
What?
We're going to talk about James Bond. I think specifically the Brosnan films.
Yeah, exactly. So he was in, the Pierce Brosnan's films. He was in X Men. He was in Spy Kids.
Yeah.
And of course, he was in the greatest film of all time, Son of the Mask. He was all over. He was in all of the stuff we were watching. It is cool. But anyway, so Nightcrawler is an awesome character, and we're very glad that Alan played Nightcrawler. He did the character justice. I played X Men, the official game when I was younger, which is mostly garbage, but the Nightcrawler stuff in that game is really awesome because you can actually go around teleporting around things, and you can teleport around enemies while you fight them.
That game is set in between X Men 2 and X Men The Last Stand. Yes. And apparently it serves as an explanation why Nightcrawler isn't in X Men The Last Stand, which I think I read the synopsis. Apparently the reasoning is Nightcrawler something like, being an X-Man's too violent for me, I'm just gonna leave.
I mean, that's fair. He was established as a very Christian character. He's got his morals. He doesn't want to go around killing people. That's why I like the fact that in 2, he mainly rescues people. Apart from the stuff at the beginning when he's brainwashed, I can't think of a time when he ever attacks anyone. Because that's just not his thing. And I know that in the show and in the comics, he's not like this Christian pacifist. Oh no, he is. He gets all priesty at one point. Never mind. No, he is always Christian.
There's one bit I like in that where he speaks to Mystique. He's when they're at the campsite. He's like, you can look like anyone you want. Why would you choose to look like this? And Mystique's like, because we shouldn't have to.
Can I talk? I want to talk quickly before we go on to X Men 3, which I would really rather we just didn't talk about and just pretended it didn't exist.
Okay.
Rob and James had to sit through it, so we're going to talk about them. But I just want to briefly mention, before she was completely shafted in X Men 3, I am a huge fan of Rebecca Romaine.
I only know that because she was in, I think she was in Austin Powers as a model. Austin Powers had the photo shoot.
Who have we got today? Okay, great.
Austin Powers, I've heard a lot about you. I'm Rebecca Romaine. I don't believe I've had the pleasure.
Well, of course you haven't had the pleasure, Rebecca. We just met, baby, yeah.
As herself.
That's cool. But yeah, so Rebecca Romaine, I think she's cooler than the Jennifer Lawrence Mystique. I think she's awesome. There's something about her kind of understated performance where she doesn't say much, but she really doesn't need to. She just, what she's doing, what she's about. Her relationship with Ian McKellen's Magneto is delightful.
Oh yes.
It has my favorite scene in X Men 2 when they're on the plane and they're giggling to each other in the corner.
Oh yeah.
I think Bobby and Rogue, they can't touch each other even though they're in a relationship. I think they're laughing they're not going to last. I think that's probably what they're.
Oh yeah, and there's that beautiful line when Rogue turns towards them and kind of what are you going on about? And Magneto's just saying, I love what you did with your hair. It's just
and then
they're gay best friends. It's great.
And there's that perfect scene with where on the X-Jet where Pyro comes over and sits next to Magneto, and Magneto's just like, oh yes, you are a god among insects. Don't you ever forget that. And then by the end of the movie, Pyro's like, yeah, X-Men, I'm going with you.
You know what? If I had to choose between siding with Picard or Gandalf, I probably would go with Gandalf. Like, sorry guys, but Gandalf goes on weird ass adventures and Picard follows the rules too much, so...
There's something more human about Gandalf, I think. He's just kind of like, I think there's a bit where a dwarf insults him in The Hobbit. He's like, you know what, I'm going to go walk by myself for a bit through the dragons. I can't stand any of these dwarves.
I've suddenly realised how similar Picard and Professor X are, and how similar Magneto and Gandalf are, and I can't get this out of my head now.
There's something I wanted to talk about in regards to Nightcrawler before we move on as well. You know, the scene where where the X-Men basically come to visit his church, as it were. There's something really gothic about that whole scene. Like, he's this tortured kind of individual that's like alone in this like dark gothic place, basically.
He looks like a demon, so...
Yeah, and it's almost tragic as well. Like, he's like a victim of his own tragedy of being made, you know... He has his power, basically, and evil's taken over him, in a way. And I think
it's cool.
I love that. I wish they fleshed it out a bit more in the film, but...
This is the thing. If X-Men 3 hadn't been made by idiots, we probably would have got a real sequel that could touch on all the characters. Let's talk about X-Men 3.
I've got controversial opinions.
An unfocused mess of a movie.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god. I want to say I saw this film on like some friend's laptop on a DVD, and that was my first experience of The Last Stand. Right. And you know what? That's the best way to watch this film.
For the record, right? I kind of liked it. I mean, I didn't. No, come on, please.
We hinted this at the end of the last episode that me and James had conflicting opinions.
All right, but
now we know what those are. Because you hate this movie,
guys.
Right.
I'll be honest. I pretend that this film doesn't exist, so I'm gonna hang back. You guys just
wait.
Lay it all out.
Can I just at least give a little bit of a
James,
disclaimer?
say whatever
I'll
you
let
want.
James
honestly.
go first.
Alright, for the record.
Right,
for the record, I watched Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix before I watched it, and also watched the MCU Netflix shows, which I did not enjoy. So I was kind of like, right, I know what a really, really bad superhero show and movie is like. So my expectations are mediocrely low. Everyone told me it was a terrible film. And I watched it and I thought, oh, okay, it's nowhere near as bad as the torture I've just endured with these other films and shit.
Low bar, man.
That's the thing. No, I'm a low bar man. Yeah, like I just like literally go into these things. So I do the same with Star Wars. I just think this is going to be dumb. This is going to be very dumb.
I know, but it's depressing that we've actually reached lower since.
Also, one last thing as well. There is one line of dialogue I love in that movie, which is from Magneto, when he's about to like go attack that compound or whatever. He's going to use his abilities to remove the guns from the soldiers. He realises he can't, and he's just like, plastic, they've learned.
Humans and their guns. Plastic, but learned.
I think what the biggest problem with this movie is there's too much going on. There's too many characters and plots that aren't given enough time with awful pacing, and plus, like the first two had like kind of a relatively serious vibe. This one just throws it all out the window. Feels like a dumb action movie and not in a good way.
It really shafted a lot of characters. It's so
especially let's go on to Cyclops.
Yeah.
So Cyclops in this movie, like in the last movie, his girlfriend died. You think that would be a great opportunity to give this character an arc, so he could just become like more like the leader, the character that's been that was established. But no, because as well as Bryan Singer jumping ship to make Superman Returns,
what a bad decision in its own right.
Yeah, I mean James Marsden, who played Cyclops, jumped ship to play to get cucked by Superman in Superman Returns, so they kill off Cyclops.
Oh my god. Carry on, sorry.
To think that Superman Returns was directed by Bryan Singer and starred Kevin Spacey. Like, what a cursed film.
Let's move on!
X Men 3 was directed by Brett Ratner.
I know, it's also a curse.
Oh, okay. I didn't actually know, to be for the record, when I did watch it, I didn't know that. When I did find out, I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, another problem is with the amount of characters, there's so many characters in this movie that you forget about these characters until they reappear. Like, we've got different plots. I've got the Dark Phoenix stuff with Jean Grey coming back from the dead. You've got the mutant cure, so you've got Magneto gathering an army of supervillains, and then at the start of the movie, we get establishing, like, what's his name? Archangel, I think. He's, like, shaving his wings off. Like, and then, like, he shows up, like, half an hour later, where they're trying to give him the mutant cure, then he flies away. Then, like, an hour later, he shows up at the X Men mansion, and you're like, oh, I forgot you were in the movie.
Yeah.
At the start of the movie, Mystique gets cured, and then she vanishes, and then, like, you find out she's, like, knocking on Magneto, and you're like, oh, I forgot you were in the movie.
But, like, that's such a, like, it just shows how little they gave a shit. Like, this is the thing, I don't swear much on this podcast, but, like, they gave zero shit about Mystique in X Men 3, and that actually pisses me off so much, because it's like, you got this character who's awesome, and then you depower her for no reason, and then not only do you depower her, but then you have her betray the cause she's been fighting for her entire life to, like, screw over Magneto. And they even come out with a thing where they're like, oh, hell have no fury, like a woman scorned. Fuck you.
I'm going to have so much fun.
Here's a perfect analogy for what The Last Stand felt like when I was going back to watch it. It felt like, so...
I only care about Mystique, so I'm just angry that Mystique was...
X-Men 2 ends with a lot of potential, like, there's they won, but at a big cost. And that movie could have, the third movie could have built up on that. Like, we've got, like, Pyro's left the X-Men to go with Magneto, Jean Grey's dead.
Yeah.
And
they actually do tease the Phoenix thing at the end of X-Men 2, because when she rescues the ship at the end, you can see the wingspan of the Phoenix in, like, the outline of the thing she creates, like, to stop the water destroying it.
Not just that, but also before the end credits, you see a shadow of the Phoenix as well.
So there was all this big implication, and you think, oh my god, we're going to get a Dark Phoenix film. As well, we discovered later on that was a terrible thing anyway, but that should have been the focus of X-Men 3.
From what I heard was there was studio interference. Never a good thing, because basically what happened, I think the studio really wanted them to do the Mutant Cure line, which Joss Whedon had done in the Astonishing X-Men comics.
Right.
They really wanted to use that, so that's why we got this.
Everything's cursed now.
I mean, I'm still a big Buffy fan as well.
But... I know. We are gonna talk about Buffy. Don't worry. But yeah, fair, I'm just thinking, like, man,
I'm still gonna maintain I enjoyed the third film when we move on to the other films, because let's be honest, there are worse films than number 3. Really bad.
On to the next film.
Yes, let's go on to the next
film. Is this X Men Origins?
Yes, it is.
Again,
I'm excited.
It feels like, I've said X Men 3 feels like a dumb action film, but not in a good way. X Men Origins feels even more like a dumb action movie than The Last Stand, with even worse pacing. So a lot of the film's boring. There's, like, some scenes just feel super pointless, and the film would be better if they cut those things out, as they just lessen the impact of, like, certain story beats. Like, there's a part where, what's his name, Sabretooth, who on record is lame in this movie. There's a scene where he goes and kills, like, Dominic McGonaghan's character, who's working at a fun fair, and I'm like that scene is lame because we've spent barely any time with this character. We don't care if he dies. It would have been much more impactful if he'd started with Stryker going and find Wolverine and saying, oh, someone's killing you. It makes it more surprising when Sabretooth suddenly shows up and kills Wolverine's girlfriend, or in quotation marks, kills Wolverine's girlfriend, because it turns out this is all, like, some over-elaborate plots to get Wolverine's powers, so, because Stryker's building Deadpool. Oh my god, this movie's so stupid.
So, a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to say that, I do think that X Men Origins is a terrible movie, 100%. But there are two scenes. I know, for me, because I love bad movies for the most part.
No, this is how bad X Men Origins is, guys.
If I don't like it. But there are two scenes that I did enjoy. So the first scene I enjoyed was the one where you see Wolverine and Sabretooth fighting through all the wars. I thought they were really well done.
Oh, that bit was cool.
That was cool. And the second scene I did like is when Wolverine punched Gambit in the face. It was very... I don't know why, but it was like the bit where he's like, I'm going to take you down.
2 years I rotten in that hellhole and I never...
Just knocks him right out.
It really shafted Gambit.
Why is Will.i.am in this movie?
I don't know why Will.i.am is... Well, Will.i.am is in this movie to deliver my favourite line in the movie, where it's him going, "We hunted our own kind, Logan. There's a special place in hell for what we did." I don't know why, I just find that line really...
What I dislike is that the X Men Origins also kind of get slipped in as well. Like, there's all these other X Men...
Oh, why is Cyclops in it? Like,
yeah, like, what the hell?
and, what did they do to Deadpool? Like, why?
We were kind of like dancing around it, but yeah, Deadpool, what the hell?
Is there a reason? Do we know why they didn't even let him have a mouth?
They established it at the start with because Wade Wilson's one of the mutants who's doing mercenary work for Stryker, and Stryker's like, "Oh yeah, Wilson, you'd be a great soldier if you didn't talk so much," and then they sew his mouth shut. So I don't know why they did it.
Right, well, there's a good thing that can be taken away from this. Oh, sorry,
it also ties into the plot of the movie. It's basically Stryker injects Wolverine with the adamantium, and apparently what Stryker's plan was to gather all these mutants, take their powers, so he can combine them into one super mutant who's Deadpool, and it's dumb.
Why is Deadpool in this film? Deadpool is like a fourth wall breaking character. You know, he doesn't fit in, especially not as the villain.
That's the thing, because Deadpool was made for the comics, and I think there was less creative freedom with these characters, and I think they were a bit worried that he was a bit too weird and cartoonish and R-rated to be included into an X Men movie, so they tried to fit it to the franchise that they had made for themselves, and it backfired. Actually, well, a good thing.
Don't include him.
Wait. But to be fair, it is provide massive amounts of material for the later Deadpools to take the piss out of. God, there's in Deadpool 1 and 2, they really just take the mick out of that movie so much.
Wait, is that you? Stryker finally figured out how to shut you up.
Hey, it's me. Don't scratch.
Oh yeah.
There was another good thing about this movie. I've not played it, but I've heard good things. There was a video game tied to this movie, and it is so gory. It's like an Asian-rated game. Your Wolverine just slashing people into pieces. I've seen one bit where you climb onto a helicopter, take the guy out, take the guy out of the helicopter, throw him into the propellers, and cut his head off. And also, to make it even better, you could do it wearing Wolverine's yellow spandex from the comics as an unlockable costume.
This sounds better than the movie. Look at the release. Apparently, it actually got good reviews for the game, surprisingly.
I just don't get why get Ryan Reynolds. Well, I guess Ryan Reynolds wasn't a huge name at that point.
Should we move on to the next movie? Or
yes. Vast improvement.
Let's just put this movie to rest because it needs to die.
It needs to die. It needs to go away. Go away, X Men Origins Wolverine.
And the next one, I believe, is First Class.
Yes, which actually, when I was watching them all, ended up being my favourite.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I find that interesting, yeah, because did you not think Logan was better, or Deadpool, or what was it you liked better about it?
I just thought it really wasn't. I love we get to see more of the friendship between Xavier and Magneto, and it makes it more devastating. At the end, when Magneto goes further down the path of darkness, it makes it more devastating to see this friendship fall apart.
Yeah,
and to see Magneto's steps closer to the darkness. And I love the alternative history as well. It's involves the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's so cool. I love it when films do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do. They did a great job getting Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy for Professor X and Magneto. I think they did a great job.
Also, I'm going to say both about the Magneto Nazi Hunter scene.
Yes.
That is Magneto start of that film, he's got some serious James Bond vibes. That was a clear influence. Like,
it's very cool.
I think the problem for me with First Class, as much as I do like it, I think the problem for me is that it's just not a full-on Magneto movie.
It's actually planned X Men Origins Magneto, and there's also going to be a young X Men movie, and I think they kind of just decided to merge those two together. And Matthew Vaughn, who was originally going to direct The Last Stand, but dropped out because he didn't think it'd make a good movie in enough time, they approached him to do this, and he thought, "This sounds such a cool movie. I'm doing this."
Also, there is one scene, and we've sweared probably the most in this Bloobcast than we have in any other one, but there is one fantastic scene where where Hugh Jackman shows up as Wolverine, and they're like James McAvoy, and they both come up to Wolverine going like, "Hey, would you like to join the X Men?" He goes, "F off."
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher. Sounds Xavier. Go f yourself.
And there is I think that started. I think every movie since then always tries to sneak in an F-bomb, because you can have one F-bomb if you get bumped up to a 15.
Yeah.
So that was the one, and it's a fun little scene for Hugh Jackman.
The only real downsides I have with First Class are some of the characters like Havoc and Banshee don't really get much development, although they are fun characters. And then this is the beginning of these movies doing what they want. There's some mostly consistent with the other X-Men movies, but there is the ending kind of contradicts the flashback at the start of X-Men 3. Although if you don't watch X-Men 3, it's not a problem. Don't watch X-Men 3.
Yeah.
Well, at least watch the scene with the plastic guns, because it is very funny.
What are your thoughts on Mystique? Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique.
In this movie, I think she's fine. I like her. She kind of has an arc, although it is a bit.
I don't like the arc, if I'm honest. I think
it is a bit weird.
Yeah,
I think it's a bit weird. Professor X and Mystique are childhood friends and kind of adoptive siblings, and then that's never acknowledged in the other 3 movies.
Yeah, I think it could have worked if they did a good job of establishing why she turned evil, but really it was just you should go join them, and she just does. She just turns evil, just like that.
There was kind of Magneto is kind of encouraging her to be to show her true self, so that kind of made me won me over.
I understand why she would turn to Magneto, because Professor X is so goddamn lame in comparison to Magneto, so I would always side with him no matter what.
They grew up together though. It's a bit
it is that
real
a bit,
isn't it?
That's the problem. If she had just been one of just a mutant that just kind of turns up and then I don't know. I think she should have always been with Magneto, I guess, because I think that's where she's most interesting.
What if she grew up with Magneto? That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
We'll get into this on later movies, because what they do with Mystique in later movies is really bad. I think.
Yeah. So, is there anything else we want to talk about First Class? I mean, it was the first film I saw in cinemas. I'll just put that out there.
I remember seeing this in the cinema. I remember seeing it with a group of friends.
I think my problem with First Class, I think, is that I love the relationship between X and Magneto. I love all of the stuff about the actual origins, but I don't know, the main plot, whatever. You can it could have been anything and it would work. As you said, the Cuban Missile Crisis is fun, but a lot of the characters are kind of throwaway.
Yeah, I think it's very close between this and X Men 2 for me in terms of how much I enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an enjoyable film though. It's definitely one of the more watchable ones.
Now we're on to the Wolverine, which
I liked that film. I
thought it was it's okay. It's kind of enjoyable, but it's nothing spectacular. It feels just like a generic action movie that happens to have Wolverine in it, but it does have some cool ideas.
Again, I like that they actually took elements of X Men 3 and made it into something more. So like there was the Jean Grey stuff, like where he was like having PTSD from stabbing her, and he keeps getting that.
I like.
There's actually developed from that, and I think they did a really good job of that. Also, it's a dumb movie, and I went into it thinking it's going to be a dumb movie. And there's like a giant robot samurai, and like there's a guy that's like, I want to live forever, and he's just like, no, you don't want to get what I got. You don't want to live forever, and it's just like, I love it.
I mean, I thought it was okay, but it's like nothing. I'm glad I watched it, but it's not something I'm going to seek out again. I mean, I'm glad I watched it.
I might rewatch it sometime.
There's a cool train fight.
That's cool.
That's the only reason you need to watch any part of the Wolverine, is that there's a cool train fight, and that is my commentary on the Wolverine.
Do you know what it is I love about the film The Wolverine? It's that it takes itself so freaking seriously. It's so ridiculous. Like,
I don't know.
He's like, you don't want to live forever. I'm not healing like I used to. Oh my god! And it's just like all this dialogue that's like delivered. It's so silly sounding dialogue, and it's delivered so seriously. It makes me laugh.
No, we haven't talked about it, but we should mention it. Hugh Jackman, right? Like, has been amazing throughout all of these films. Like, we'll probably talk more about him once we get to Logan, but like, no,
he kind of carries the series, doesn't he?
Yeah, for the Wolverine, like, he got jacked for that movie. Like, my god, yeah, like proper, like. You know, like when you compare like his body in like the first X-Men film, and then once you get to the Wolverine, it's like, oh my god, it's like a transformation almost. It's incredible. Yeah. The guy was dedicated.
Oh, for sure. Okay, now the next one's is an interesting one because it's kind of like a crossover of like kind of like a sequel to both First Class and X Men 3, which is Days of Future Past.
Fan of, I think.
I liked that one. I remember seeing it in the cinema. I think one of the things I remember most about seeing it in the cinema was we saw the trailer for Transformers 4. I remember me and my friend laughing at the point where Optimus Prime is riding on a giant robot T-Rex.
I like Days of Future Past because for me it was kind of a return to form for the series, because we had literally, I was a big fan of X-Men, the films by this point, so I rewatched X-Men 1 and 2 a lot. And I was at that point where I was like, oh god, we've had Origins, and we've had the Wolverine, and it's all like fine, but like in terms of like the original cast of X-Men with Ian McKellen and all of that gang, I was like, I wish we had a good film with them again. And so like when I saw this in the cinema, it was really wonderful for me because it was like a nostalgia trip.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Hearing the old theme music again, all that. And then the best part is they retconned all of X-Men 3, which is all I needed.
At the very end. That was
do you know what I think is the thing? With my viewing, I watched it with my brother and stuff like that, and neither of us had actually watched the original movies at this point, which was this is entirely my fault that I didn't enjoy this film as much as I did. I reckon if I watched it now, knowing what happened in the original movies, I would have enjoyed it a lot more, because what it is that it's a movie that's trying to fix a broken franchise of other movies, in a way, with the time travel. And obviously I went into it thinking, I wonder what this is going to be about. I thought it was going to be a sequel to First Class, so there'd be more of that. But no, I was literally confused by what the hell was going on. I was like, what?
Because you have all of these other characters, and it's like, who are these people?
And why is there two Xaviers? What's going on? But now that I've watched the original movies, it makes a lot more sense to me. But again, I feel like things do get a bit confusing from here on with the movies in terms of the timelines and stuff like that.
No, I think this one was fine. I think it's the next movie where things really...
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's not this movie's fault. It's the fact that the later movies didn't really build on what this movie tried to fix, if that makes sense.
My understanding of it is, by the end of this movie, is most things that happened in the first two movies happened, but Jean Grey survives, and a couple of other things were different. That's the extent of it, although, according to the next movie, no, that is not the case.
Yeah, as the movies progress, more of it gets retconned, which is really weird.
You see, the thing is, I solved this problem for me by just never seeing Apocalypse or Dark Phoenix or any of that stuff. So First Class and Days of Future Past are like this lovely, on top of like the first 2 X-Men films as well. They're just these lovely movies that I can enjoy, and I don't have to think about all the garbage that came after.
Well, trouble is,
you get onto Apocalypse.
Yeah, that's the thing, because Rob and I tortured ourselves a little bit to move forward with that discussion. So, Apocalypse. Wow.
Yeah.
What a really bad movie.
Somehow it's more of an unfocused mess of a movie than The Last Stand.
That's impressive.
Although there is stuff in there which makes you think, oh, maybe if he focused on that more, this could have been good, but nothing gets in our focus. There's a lot of just dumb, pointless and boring stuff that should have been cut. Like, at the start we get this establishing thing with, we see Cyclops showing his powers. Again, going back to Cyclops, this movie could have been a movie about Cyclops, accepting his powers, and then, and that he could have had an arc. That could have been really cool, but no, we've got to focus on all these other characters. Mystique's now apparently like a martyr for mutant kind, and ends up joining the X Men at the end, which makes no sense.
Yeah, no, like it's so weird. It's so weird that they turned her into the good person at the end. I don't get that. It doesn't make sense.
She's always awesome as a bad guy. Don't ever make Mystique a hero, because she's not. At best, she's an anti-hero.
I like the young Cyclops. I like young Cyclops. I like Sophie Turner as young Jean Grey. I like young Sprawler, but they don't get enough to do. Like they kind of just.
Do you know what? Actually, something just shooted into my brain that we didn't talk about in the last movie, but it also occurs in this movie. It's in both movies. It's Quicksilver.
Quicksilver. I was going to bring him up.
Yeah.
Quicksilver was great in the second one, in Days of Future Past. Yeah. And the scene in this movie, it's just complete, because we get this scene where everything there's a big explosion and Cyclops' brother dies, and then suddenly we've got Quicksilver in this comedy of kind of him rushing around saving everyone, and it's such a massive tonal shift. It just doesn't work.
It's nowhere near as good as the scene in the one before in Days of Future Past.
Yeah, because at that point in Days of Future Past, it was a kind of fun scene, because they were breaking into the Pentagon or something, and it was kind of a fun little side scene, before we got to the main plot of the movie. Whereas this is the whole world's blowing up.
Yeah. Also, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is meant to be on par with Thanos. He's meant to be the big Marvel villain that's gonna is gonna threaten the whole Avengers, the X Men, and everything.
He looks like Ivan Ooze from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Poor Oscar Isaac. Between Star Wars and X Men, he's just been screwed over by everything.
It's just so bad. The whole show is so bad.
He has no what's his reason for doing it? He just wants to blow everything up. That's his motivation.
Yeah.
And what do they do to Mystique?
Also, have you guys seen Alien vs Predator?
God. I've heard.
I've seen that. Yeah.
The bit at the beginning when the Predators help humanity, with the Egyptians to establish civilization or whatever. I felt those vibes with Apocalypse, he's this mutant that's gonna develop mankind in the in the Egyptian civilization and stuff like that. It's such a cliche thing to use in science fiction, and it's a cliche thing to use in speculative fiction in general.
It's cool in The Fifth Element, but that's a bit different. That's the aliens coming down.
That was charming, though. I thought, I didn't know what was going on. I was I wanted to know more about that. It was really interesting, so it was different.
It's a bit more mysterious than that as well.
Yeah.
It's not really shown. I don't know. It's very weird in that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Whereas the future episode will be The Fifth Element.
Yes,
it's on the list.
I will watch it without getting viruses.
So back to Apocalypse. Yes. What did they do to Magneto? Why did they need to give him an arc where he's got a wife and child, his wife and child die? Why did they just start evil? That whole sequence could have been cut.
Because they need to fridge more women in these films. I don't know.
Oh my god.
And speaking of shoehorning things in, there's a whole sequence where Stryker shows up and kidnaps everyone, which is an excuse to get Wolverine in the movie, which makes no sense because surely Jean Grey and Cyclops would recognise Wolverine when he shows up like 20 years later.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And there's also a weird meta joke where I think the 4 young cats like Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and I think it's supposed to be Jubilee, but she's never named. They're walking like Return of the Jedi, it's all I think film, and then Jean Grey's like, yeah, we can all agree the third one's always the worst, and this is the third in the trilogy, and it is the worst. So it was like, were they aware?
Oh yeah, didn't they make a joke? They made a joke about that, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, was it like? So you're saying this movie had no effort? They just took this fact as a third movie as an excuse to put no effort into it.
It's like they were giving themselves like a get out of jail free card. You know, it's just like saying, "Oh, don't worry, guys, it's supposed to be terrible because it's the third film." It's like, no, you could have done a good movie and you just couldn't be bothered. Anyway,
on to an actual good movie.
No. Let's get Dark Phoenix out of the way because I actually want to enjoy talking about Logan and not
technically,
feel like
I think
about
canonically,
another bad film.
Canonically, it does take place after, so I think we would be right to do that. So,
let's Phoenix.
Hell, God, baby, damn no.
Aliens.
Okay.
Why?
I mean, I understand that Marvel.
How about no?
In it, but this franchise, this X Men franchise, up till now has had no aliens in. Then suddenly there's aliens. I'm fine with aliens in things, but it's like you can't just like after like 12 films or so just suddenly throw aliens in.
When the focus is meant to be mutants and superheroes, it's like, oh, hey, we're doing aliens now.
But it's called Dark Phoenix.
The Dark Phoenix storyline, they have aliens in the comics, so I understand what they're going for, but you can't just throw them in. Like, it didn't work for Indiana Jones, it's not going to work for you.
And also, my
biggest problem with this movie is it's just boring.
It's so boring.
No tension, nothing that happens has any impact. Like, Mystique dies, and like you don't care because there's no impact. And there's more messing about the timeline because Jean Grey dies at the end of this movie. It's like, how can she die now and then be alive like in like 8 years at the start of the first X Men film?
We can 100%.
Like, these sequels, like First Class, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, they always skip ahead like 10 years. So it's like, that makes no sense. Like, I think this movie, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender should be looking more like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but no, they still look like James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender.
Again, like, to be honest, I think we can all 100% agree that this film is terrible. And you know what it is? Like, with the films that you guys thought were like terrible stuff, like, I went in thinking, you know, it's going to be dumb fun. This is not even dumb fun. There's not even any dumb fun for me to enjoy. This is boring.
I mean,
this is so unbelievably bad.
It is so bad, I mean, but I'm not angry about it. Like,
I was, which is unusual. Like, I just literally finished the film, I spent money on it, and I was like, for God's sake, why?
I mean, I watched it on Disney Plus, so at least I watched it.
Oh, okay. God damn it.
It's weird how, like, how little of, like, a cultural impact or anything it's made. Like, it's, like, even Apocalypse made a bigger splash on, like...
This movie was,
discussion.
This is the end of the franchise, basically.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing, considering how we started and now we've ended with this.
Also, Magneto's depicted terribly in the film. He's not...
Oh, yeah, he's got some, like, camp with, like, mutants, and I was like...
Yeah. Like, what the hell? And he's not even a villain in the movie. He's like one of the X Men, basically. It's like, what is going on?
I mean, the most of the thing he does is he tries to kill Jean Grey, but that's another
kind
problem
of warranted.
With Dark Phoenix. I mean, that's the problem with them doing the Dark Phoenix because we've barely spent enough time with Jean in Apocalypse, so we can't just suddenly jump in and do Dark Phoenix now because we're not attached to the character.
What is it about the Dark Phoenix storyline that apparently Hollywood is just really bad?
I don't know. I love the Marvel comics, and I really have not read into the Dark Phoenix storyline at all. I know House of M and all that, but I don't know about Dark Phoenix.
Well, it's just like some girl like has like an evil alter ego that's more powerful than her. I don't understand how this is like a difficult thing to do. I swear they do it. They do it in Carrie. They do it well in Carrie, the horror film. Like,
I mean, they do it. Apparently, they do it well. I need to watch the whole animated series, but they do it well in the animated version of the X Men.
I still haven't seen it actually. That one.
So we'll have to watch it. When we do, we will talk about it.
100%, yeah. Shall we move on to a good film?
An actual good movie.
Yay! Let's talk about Logan.
Mate. So I watched this with Euan, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's funny because we watched that. No, I think we watched the Lego Batman movie first, and then we jumped onto Wolverine, which is such a contrast between two films.
We did a double feature. We went back into the cinema the moment after we saw a movie.
We should do that again. It was amazing, but like
it's a great way to watch films, guys. Like, I'm bringing double features back.
I mean, we did this one. Remember, Euan, remember we were out a friend's house and we put on the Terminator, and then we followed it up with Spy Kids 3.
Yeah, again, good lineup. Like,
they both had Bill Paxton in, so
yeah, exactly, perfect.
Could I quickly make this criticism because it's related to Days in Future Past? I don't know what timeline this film takes place in.
I think it doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter.
That's the thing.
Its own thing.
Well, it's set in the original Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, if you want to think about like the canon or anything like that, I guess the idea is it's this kind of like alternate timeline where all the mutants die apart from essentially the most powerful mutants, because you've got like, you know, the immortal Wolverine, and then you've got the super powerful telepath Patrick Stewart. I mean, you know,
it's a timeline.
I mean, I love this movie, but I think putting it. I mean, I like to listen to these movies is you just watch 1, 2 first class Days of Future Past, basically. Yeah. But if you watch Logan at the end, it's like it's kind of
it doesn't work
because Days of Future Past has got a really nice ending where everything's like back to normal. You can get X Men 3 happens, but then Logan's like so. I mean, I love the movie, but it's like so depressing. Like everyone's there.
It's not a hero film. It's not an X Men film. It's its own thing. That's the thing. It's
it's a beautiful movie.
It's a western,
and it reminded me of Mad Max as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the Mad Max films have a similar kind of story. It's like not massive save well things. It's just Mad Max wandering out, going about his business, and then suddenly stumbles in upon this big thing.
It's the Fallout aesthetic where you have cyberpunk, post-apocalyptia mixed with the old classic western. I think it's a wonderful aesthetic.
Yeah,
that's the reason I'm a fan of Fallout.
This is a really small scale story as well. It's like it's character driven and it's not a big full blown balls to save the world kind of story, which I like.
It's a personal story.
Yeah.
It's Wolverine looking back at, you know, I think what I love about him is it's kind of interesting. I was thinking about it today. He's very comparable to characters like Kratos and Joel in The Last of Us. Basically the bearded bad dad, I guess, where it's the old man, well, not old man, but kind of middle-aged guy. He's grown a beard, and even Samurai Jack in some ways.
In a way, he's lost hope, but he learns more from his peer.
Because he finds X-23, and she kind of like installed him with a sense of purpose.
Yeah, exactly. It's the story of this old warrior who has lived through, in the case of like Kratos and Wolverine, and Samurai Jack, centuries or years of violence, and you know they're conscious of how many people they've killed, and you know it's this nightmare that they're living in of trauma and depression and lost hope, but then they meet the new generation and they realize that they have a purpose, which is to help, you know, the young survive this new horrible world that they're leaving behind, you know.
There's one thing
really
I kind of like. There's basically the whole talk is the mutants want to get to this they want to get to this page called Eden. And you're like, what is this page? And then suddenly Wolverine's in the bar, he's reading an X Men comic book that this girl's been reading, and then find out Eden's a place that was from these comic books, and it has like the same address. And it's kind of depressing that the one hope they had was just
made up. It's like a comic book.
Well, it was a fantasy become reality, and it reminds me of a Pratchett quote. You need to believe things that are not true. How else can they become? You know, fantasies can build realities, and I'm thinking in a weird way for these young children that were like just alone and like, you know, hunted as they were, they needed hope in like escapism, but their escapism became a reality. They built a new world for themselves, basically, and they got away from this terrible world and built their own, and I think that's quite beautiful.
And also, like, nothing I like about this movie is that I know it's kind of depressing to see in that way, but seeing old Charles Xavier can be kind of funny at times. Like, there's a bit where he sticks his tongue out, and some stuff he comes out with. It's depressing seeing him like that, but you can't help but laugh at some of it.
But it's so lovely, or it's kind of wonderful to see this family dynamic kind of develop, where you've got essentially a grandfather with Xavier, you've got the bad dad, like I said, with Wolverine, and then you've got the young girl, X-23, the daughter, and it's this kind of...
Yeah, I love how foul-mouthed Xavier is in this movie as well. He's like dropping F-bombs like there's no tomorrow, and it's so different from how we've seen him in the other movies.
Do you know what's interesting?
I think it's an old man, he's senile at this point.
When the movie tries to be like X-Men, I think that's when it's at its worst, believe it or not. When
the end thing.
When they like clone Wolverine and all that, and he's got that evil counterpart. That's something I can imagine happening in one of the bad X-Men movies, and I'm just this is so stupid. Don't do this. Just make it about Wolverine.
I was like, why did they have to come? I mean, I like that it was kind of like Wolverine kind of like facing up to like how he sees himself as like a animal, like. But why did it have to be a clone? Like,
because I like it because it's kind of a science fiction-y explanation. Because
that's the thing.
Because X-23 is a clone of Wolverine as well, but she's just been kind of grown from, she was kind of born from a test tube kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the Wolverine clone is obviously just this kind of fully created monster.
But
but it's not really to do with the science or whatever behind it. It's to do with the theme
emotion.
of it.
But that's the thing. I think
it's Wolverine
end of because I think Hugh Jackman, when he did this film, he said, "I'm not playing this character again. This is the end for me.
It's the end for
him." Killing that character. Yeah.
It's such a poignant end. I mean, I don't know if you knew that about the whole Disney buying Fox thing at the time, because I don't think it was even on the cards. So I think it was the idea that Fox are just going to keep pumping out these movies, and he was like. It would have been depressing if he was in Dark Phoenix. Yeah. I'm glad they didn't find a way to shoehorn him in.
A bit horrible. But the thing is, going back to what you were saying about like the sci-fi of it, really, I think there's a good, healthy amount of sci-fi it has with X-23. Is it X-23? Just double check.
Yeah, X-23.
Yeah. But then when like the identical clone of Wolverine came in, I think the sci-fi got too silly for me, and it didn't feel right. And that's why it's like it became too much like an X-Men film when it's not. It's not an X-Men film. It's associated with the X-Men movies, but it's really its own thing. It's wearing its clothes very lightly, and it's like.
I think it was cool. I think it's a neat scene.
I know
what you mean.
I guess what it is, it's like it's trying to establish its own identity, but it's still stuck with the X-Men movies a little bit. And there's a silliness that it's trying to break free on while also being poignant and serious. And that whole time I watched it, I was just like,
Daphne Keane, I want to give a little shout out to. She's the girl who plays X-23.
And is in his materials.
Yes, she's awesome. She's Spanish-British, I want to say. So she speaks Spanish fluently. So it's great. We're seeing, this young girl who barely speaks to Wolverine at all because he can't speak Spanish.
He only starts speaking like the third act after. Without getting into spoilers.
I think we've passed that point. We can talk spoilers at this point.
So
we forgot that we need to just.
Xavier dies.
Yeah.
I mean, he died in X Men: The Last Stand as well, but
who cares?
that movie didn't happen.
Yeah, it was retconned. It's fine.
Yeah, Days of Future Past says it didn't happen, so it didn't happen.
Yeah, so she's incredibly expressive. Like, you could see the kind of what she was going for without saying anything, which is really cool to see in like a 10-year-old or whatever she was at this point. You know? Does a great job.
Like, her acting skills are on par with like Hugh Jackman. It's ridiculous. Like, It's very hard for a child actor. Like you can see it. Like if you see, for instance, I can't believe I'm going to mention this, so I'm probably going to be crucified. But the early Harry Potters, Daniel Radcliffe, and all that. Like their acting's really kind of not brilliant, but they're also kids, so you can forgive that in a way.
This film, Logan, is actually a remake, but it's not a remake of any X Men films. It's a remake of a Western. And the Western is Shane, which is an old classic Western about a gunslinger who turns up to town, and there's all this stuff going on between the cattle ranchers and the farmers, and the cattle ranchers are like bringing in hired guns to screw people over. So Shane is brought in as his own kind of hired gun to protect the farmers. And there's a young
like Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of vibe. And there's a young boy in Shane who, at the time, was apparently considered a very talented child actor, but he's terrible. I just want to put that out there. He is a terrible actor. Hence why I bring it up. But Shane is, the young boy kind of idolizes Shane because Shane's this cool cowboy. He's awesome.
Yeah. X-23 does not idolize Wolverine. In fact, anything she kind of just puts up with him.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious.
But that's what Shane is about, is that Shane tells the young boy, please don't idolize me. There's nothing beautiful about what I do. I'm literally a killer, and I think what's so sad about this kind of modern version of Shane is that it's, the children are killers as well now. Like, we've got to this
thing
point
where X-23 goes into the shop and she kind of like starts like taking things she doesn't understand, like you have to pay for them. And then she nearly kills like the poor shopkeeper. It's just like, yeah, you have to pay for this.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of what was her name? 7 or 12 in Stranger Things. What's her name?
11.
11. Thank you. I got there eventually. But no, there is a scene where 11 also steals from a market and doesn't understand that you need to pay for this stuff because
I wonder because we used to romanticize innocence a lot more in culture. You think of Victorian times and Peter Pan and that sort of thing, where childish innocence was kind of seen as this thing that it doesn't get destroyed until later on. Whereas now I feel like we have a better understanding that actually, first off, childish innocence doesn't really exist, or at least it
doesn't. It tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, kids have to grow up a lot faster now than I think they've ever had to before, and I think Logan reflects that.
100%.
And so does Stranger Things. The child actors in that are amazing.
I think even during the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of movies about children that go through horrific bullying experiences, like Karate Kid, for instance, where there was someone threatening his life and threatening his teacher's life. There was a sort of understanding that people are not nice in general a lot of the time. That sounded very bleak. They came out a bit bleaker than I expected. But
now
it's lesson I didn't really learn until secondary school. So
yeah, I think people understood that people get horribly bullied in secondary school and all that, and that not always with children, people don't have their best interest in heart. It's just and people come from disastrous upbringings and stuff like that. So I think that awareness reflects in the art, and it reflects in the art of Logan as well, because some children are abandoned, and in many ways this is a child that's been abandoned and left by society almost entirely to fend for herself, and she, as you say, she has to mature very quickly because of that. And that's it's a very poignant, but it's a very sad story, a tragic story that she has to go through in the whole film.
It's strange seeing it done with superheroes. Logan almost feels like one of my favorite Superman stories is whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, because I should tell the audience I'm a big fan of Superman.
Yes,
I love Superman so much. That kind of era of superhero films, the kind of X Men feels more like the original Spider-Man film, but also the first Batman film as well from 1989, and and the original Superman film from 1978. These kind of cute old films. It's weird to look at X-Men like that, but as we said, the original X-Men film was just this kind of dumb, fun, late 90s, early 2000s film.
It's something
and it's matured. It's matured.
It's something I wanted to bring up is I kind of miss it when films were like this. They could just focus on being their own thing and didn't have to worry about fitting into some established cinematic universe.
Yeah, definitely. Logan, as you said, it is strongest when you don't place it too much into the original X-Men story. But like I said, on a kind of metatextual level, it is related to those films in the sense that it's saying we're done. This is it, guys. We're not doing any more.
No, it's okay.
The great thing about it is you can watch this movie without seeing any other X-Men film, I feel, and you can still get a sense of it. Although, if you've seen the X-Men films, it enhances your enjoyment.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's weird to think that Logan was directed by the same guy that did the Wolverine.
Oh yeah,
it's funny that. Yeah, James Mangold.
So the next X-Men films that are coming out, I'm not sure when they'll be, but they will be part of the MCU. Do you have any thoughts on this?
The MCU needs to end.
My opinion. Yeah, the MCU kind of overall. There's some good films, but I think overall just does nothing for me. All the films feel kind of a bit the same, and it's kind of like they kind of focus more on establishing that all these movies take place in the same universe rather than what they should be focusing on, which is telling the best story you can, and then maybe throwing in some references to stuff going on elsewhere. Although I do applaud how ambitious it is with these X-Men films being incorporated. It's just come at too great a cost because Disney have bought Fox, and so as a result, Disney owns The Simpsons, they own Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they own Alien and Predator. It's Disney now owns all these franchises, and a lot of people were just oh yeah, we want X-Men and Fantastic Four in the MCU. I'm what? That it's come at this big cost of Disney now having a practical monopoly over the entertainment industry.
I have mixed opinions about the whole thing, but I'm leaning more towards your argument there in general. I think that Disney is taking over everything. It's taking over freedom of expression over these characters, It's making it a monopoly. They're basically taking over all these ideas. Slowly held their guns in regard to Spider-Man.
Oh, yes, I applauded them for that.
Yes. And because of them, we've got Spider-Verse. And I think, there's more than the MCU, You can do so much with these characters outside of the MCU. And Sam Raimi...
this is why I'm glad that Transformers... Because originally the Transformers comics were part of the Marvel Universe. I'm glad that was phased out because... that could have led to Transformers being another property under Disney's belt. I'm glad it's not.
Yeah. Again, also going back to what you're saying about a shared universe and all that, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the first two movies, had nothing to do with the rest of the MCU. And as soon as they got kind of interwoven with the Infinity War stuff, it made me like it a bit less. Yeah. It confused the story. Yeah,
they ruined Guardians.
They ruined Gamora.
I really liked Guardians, and they.
It would have been better as its own thing.
I'm just frustrated.
It could have been the next Star Wars. It's just
when Star Wars came out, remember we had Guardians of the Galaxy. I was like, yes, we can get more space movies because I love sci-fi. I'm big into Babylon 5 and Farscape and of course Star Wars. I was like, I want more like that. I want some great space operas.
Do we want to talk about Deadpool at all, by the way?
Oh yeah, let's talk about Deadpool.
Talk about Deadpool.
Yeah, let's talk about Deadpool.
What is Deadpool in relation to the X-Men films?
It's kind of its own thing, but kind of not.
He's a mutant, right? I guess
he's a mutant. I think the thing with him is because he breaks the fourth wall all the time. Doesn't really matter what continuity he's in because he can jump between continuities.
He makes a joke about it actually at one point. It's which timeline does this take place in? And also,
James McAvoy one or the Patrick Stewart one?
Yeah, and also he takes the piss out of Origins as well. So he's basically.
There's a bit. I think the post-credit scene of Deadpool 2, he goes back in time and kills.
Ryan Reynolds before he does Green Lantern.
Not Deadpool, and then Ryan Reynolds reading the script of Green Lantern, he just gets shot by Deadpool.
It's amazing. It's almost kind of like a postmodern look of the whole franchise as a whole. Towards the end.
And we also get Juggernaut done better than in The Last Stand. That was something we forgot to talk about.
Oh, I'm the Juggernaut. Sorry.
That started from a viral video, and they put it in the movie.
Wait, was it actually a viral video before the scene?
Yeah, it was.
Oh my god!
They came out in 2005, and then so they put it in the script.
You can't harm me. Are you a ass? Do you not know who I am? He must not know who I am. I'm the Juggernaut. Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut.
It's so bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like
funny,
I like the Deadpool. It's not. I mean, I don't know if really there's much we can say about Deadpool because they're not poignant films, but they're just so funny and
they are fun to watch.
They are very fun.
Yeah,
and they're basically a deconstruction of all the films we just talked about, really.
Yeah, there's the fun credit sequence at the beginning, isn't it? Basically, like the love interest, the British villain. The side characters, the comedy character. It's they have fun with that.
I love that too. They're not like big superhero. It's kind of like a day in the life of Deadpool.
Yeah. That's one thing I really enjoyed about it is that it's not a big event film. It's just
isn't there a scene
Deadpool like rescuing his girlfriend or something? It's fine. That's all you need. It's like a comic book story.
Isn't there a scene where Deadpool wears Hugh Jackman's face as a while doing a kiss scene or something like that? It's just for God.
He referenced to pleasure himself or something.
I like the fact that he does an Australian accent for Wolverine because obviously Wolverine's Canadian, but I like that he references the fact that Hugh Jackman is Australian.
Reminds me of something. Before they did the animated series in the 90s, they did a pilot in the 80s called Pride of the X Men, and for some reason Wolverine is Australian.
You left before I could properly welcome you.
Welcome her? Wait, she's not joining the X Men, is she? She's just a kid.
Also, Josh Brolin is both in Infinity War as Thanos and as Cable in Deadpool.
Yeah,
and there's a joke about it. He's like, "Oh, shut it, Thanos!" It's so amazing. And also, one thing I thought was interesting in the comics. In the Marvel Comics franchise, there's a difference between a mutate and a mutant. So a mutate is something like Spider-Man. They got their abilities from external means. They got radiation, poisoning, or Fantastic Four, cosmic radiation impacts them. So they're not technically a mutant. A mutant has to be born with their abilities. But in Deadpool is actually a mutate. So what they did in the comics is that they took Wolverine's abilities from Weapon X and somehow implemented it on Deadpool and made it twice as strong. So he had a healing factor was twice as fast. But in the films, they don't do that. They just say you got a mutation, so we're going to accelerate it or something like that.
Yeah, well then that's what you need.
But they missed out.
You don't need all this complicated stuff.
But here's the thing. In comics, Deadpool always tries to join the X Men, but because he's a mutate, he can't. Because. But
Wait, the X Men are racist? What?
Yeah, they discriminate against mutates.
That's so weird. Why?
Which also brings me to my next point.
The whole thing is anti-racism.
And that brings me to my next point. My favourite quote in the whole of Deadpool 2 was I think at one point he says the whole X-Men is a dated metaphor for racism or something like that.
It really is. We haven't even talked about that. But there's,
I kind of got what they're going for with the metaphor, but at the same time, it makes sense why humans would fear these things because they can literally Magneto is dangerous.
It doesn't quite work.
There's a good scene at the beginning of the first X-Men movie where they're saying well, why should we allow respect to these mutants that can literally walk into your house or walk into a bank, walk through walls and stuff and read people's minds?
That's the thing. I was watching the movie, I was like, you know what? I kind of agree with that. I know I shouldn't.
It's the Incredibles situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where they ban superheroes.
We'll get on to another one. It's something Euan noticed about Legend of Korra, which kind of put him off.
I remember this.
We'll leave that for another time. My opinion.
There'll be an Avatar episode. We can talk about
it's on the list. Of course, we've all seen it. So.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings about it. I think. Well, my biggest problem is people always bring up the Malcolm X and Martin Luther King thing, and I really wish they wouldn't, because Magneto is not like Malcolm X. I don't care that people compare the two. They are not similar. Malcolm X did not lift up the Golden Gate Bridge with telekinetic power.
We should include the piece. We should include the piece you wrote on Malcolm X actually in the description because it's quite good, I think.
No,
if you're up to it,
it's got nothing to do with X-Men, but sure, it's mainly about Malcolm.
I mean, it is because I've always been. I mean, when I grew up, I was always taught that Malcolm X was the evil antithesis of Martin Luther King. In school, I was taught this. And I think a lot of people are taught this, and X-Men was perpetuated that a little bit. Like Magneto is Malcolm X, the bad civil rights, but really it's a bit more grayer than that. There's a moral greyness to it. So I think.
I do understand. I understand the basic level of it is that Martin Luther King, his whole thing was like peaceful protest, whereas Malcolm X was more about like if a police officer attacks me, I will fight back. I will not, I won't let dogs be set on me or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between, because I would love to see an X-Men story where Magneto was more along those lines, where he's like, yeah, I'm perfectly happy to like live my life as long as you leave me alone.
That's the thing. Magneto's portrayed as trying to take over the world.
He's a terrorist in the films. He is his whole thing is like at the end of X-Men 2, his whole thing is that he mind controls Professor X to try and kill the entire human race. Like there's a line to be crossed, and they cross it with it's a great scene, and I love Magneto doing it, but I just please don't compare Magneto, this Marvel villain, to a real life civil rights leader.
Of course, yeah.
Who I'm not we were all taught that. I think that's the crazy thing, is that all of us as kids were told, oh yeah, Magneto is Malcolm X and Professor X is Martin Luther King. We were all taught that, and it's please stop teaching kids that. It's not accurate.
And again, Deadpool takes the mick out of that, saying it's a dated metaphor.
Yeah, and it is, and I'm glad that they mentioned that.
We've gone through the main movies, we've gone through the Wolverine movies, and the new trilogy and the Deadpool movies. Is there any other ones we've missed? Or
New Mutants?
None of us have watched New Mutants though, and I'm not sure if it's even worth talking about though.
Maisie Williams is in it. That's what I know about the New Mutants.
I don't know. There's a lot of movies the Super Mario Brothers had Dennis Hopper in it, and it's still terrible.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that having a decent actor is going to change.
And the Thunderbirds movie had Ben Kingsley in it.
Yeah,
and he's awful in that movie.
He is terrible in that film.
I mean, Thunderbirds is going to be, I think, in a couple of weeks. A couple of episodes down the line. We'll talk about it then.
Is that the film or the
TV series? But we'll touch on the film.
Sweet, I can't wait for that. That'd be good.
So, what would you say our favourite film in the series is? So.
Ooh,
that's a good one.
That's really tricky.
That's a good question. With Deadpool's included in everything, every single one in this franchise, would you say?
Yeah, I guess.
All right. I am going to say Logan.
Okay. That's cool.
Okay, for me, it's really hard because I'm torn between X Men 2 and First Class, but I'm not sure. Let's go with First Class.
That's good you said that, because I'm going to say X Men 2. So we're all in a good balanced thing there. We've all picked the better film. So that's good.
I also have a question for you all. If you had a mutant ability, what would it be?
I quite like the idea of I think just hard. Maybe flying or invisibility. I'm not like generic powers, but just being able to fire every corner and like be able to like just like vanish and like see if anyone notices.
I don't know if I guess I'll just say I want to be Nightcrawler. I want to have the teleporting abilities.
Oh yeah, teleportation. So I mean, I know it's a bad movie, but Jump. I like how the teleportation worked in that movie.
Oh, yeah. That was an alright film. People like treat it like crap, but it was okay.
Yeah, I only saw it in a cinema once, so I might need to rewatch it to see if it's any good, and maybe even read the book that it was based on.
Okay.
And well, mine, I think I'm going to be Ice Guy. Do you know why? Because you
want to be called Iceman.
I want to be Iceman. Yeah, Iceman's ability, but Mr. Freeze is not Mr. Freeze. Because do you know why? Because the amount of stop motion animations I can make with that ability would be incredible. Seriously,
that would be cool.
I could just like make these like little moving ice sculptures. Imagine that.
Yeah, as always, we are on social media. So on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we are at BloobcastPod. You can also email us at bloobcast@outlook.com. And also, please be sure to give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That's because it really helps us out.
Tell us what you want from the show. What do you want us to review? We might have it on the list, but we can maybe boost it forward if there's popular demand for it.
Maybe you could like post a little call out for ideas, you know?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things we've agreed we're not going to talk about, but I won't say what they are now. But.
So the next episode, I think, because we've kind of changed things up a little bit, but the next episode we're doing will be Resident Evil, one of my favorite video game series of all time. We shall be discussing Resident Evil 1. It might be. Yes. I'm sure Rob will want to discuss 2. Don't worry, we'll discuss a bit of 2. But I think we'll
be on episode eventually.
Yeah, we're gonna
one of my favourite games of all time.
We're gonna discuss 1 because that it gives James some time to actually play any of these games. So tune in next time for Resident Evil.
No, you should say in the voice. Resident Evil.
Oh yeah, I'll say that again quickly.
Wait. Should we all say it at the same time?
Resident
Evil.
Hey.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Until next time,
thank you for listening.
You farewell.
Yeah.
Love you all.
Goodbye.
Bye.